I never thought I would see him cry. Not Tunde. Not the guy who could solve the hardest engineering equations with a calm face, who everyone in school looked up to. But that evening, in our small hostel room, he sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands, shaking like a child. "Bro, they said I have to choose," he whispered, his voice cracked. It was the first time I'd seen his confidence break. I didn't even know who they were yet. I just knew that whatever had happened, it had cut deep. Tunde was the kind of person who kept his emotions locked up. If something hurt him, you'd never know. But this time, he wasn't hiding it. His eyes were red, his shirt was wrinkled, and his phone kept lighting up with calls he refused to answer. The funny thing? Just a year ago, Tunde had no one. He was admired by everyone, but when it came to girls, he was hopeless, too shy, too careful. I used to tease him about it. But then, Ada came along. I still remember the first day she walked into our class. Bright yellow dress, bold red lipstick, that confident smile that made even the lecturer pause. Somehow, she broke through Tunde's walls without him even realizing it. At first, I thought it was just friendship, but then, she started bringing him lunch, helping with assignments, waiting for him after lectures. Tunde's life became softer, warmer. He would tell me, "Bro, this girl is different. I'm going to marry her." I laughed then. I'm not laughing now. That day in the hostel, I found out what happened. His parents had met Ada for the first time, and it didn't go well. No, scratch that. It went terribly. They didn't shout or insult her. They just looked at Tunde and said one thing: "She's not for you." No explanation, no second meeting, just rejection. Now, Tunde was sitting here, torn between the girl who made his world brighter and the family he had always loved and respected. The calls on his phone were from his mum. He wouldn't pick up. Looking back, that was the day everything started changing. The day Tunde began walking a road that would lead him far from home, far from everything he knew, and maybe even far from himself. Before Ada came into the picture, Tunde's life was as predictable as the morning chapel bell. Library, hostel, repeat. He wasn't boring, far from it. He was smart, well-dressed, and had a quiet confidence that made people respect him. But when it came to girls, it was like he had built an invisible wall around himself. I once asked him why he never made a move on any of the ladies who obviously liked him. He shrugged and said, "If I'm not sure it's worth it, I'd rather keep my peace." That was Tunde. No games, no flirting for the sake of it. Then one sunny Tuesday afternoon, she appeared. Ada. It wasn't like in the movies. No slow motion, no background music. She just walked into our lecture hall like she owned it. Her steps were quick, confident. Her bright yellow dress stood out like sunshine in a sea of gray uniforms and faded jeans. I noticed her first, but Tunde, he didn't even look up from his notebook. It was later, after class, that things started to shift. We were leaving the hall when Ada stopped Tunde. "Excuse me," she said with a smile. "You forgot your pen." She handed him a blue biro. I swear it wasn't even his pen, but Tunde just took it and mumbled thanks. From that day, she seemed to always be around. Not in a creepy way, more like she just happened to be at the cafeteria when we were eating, or happened to be sitting beside him in class. And every time, she'd find a way to talk to him. I thought Tunde would pull back. He didn't. He started looking for her too, even if he didn't admit it. Soon she was bringing him lunch in small takeaway packs. "You look tired," she'd say. "Eat before you faint." By the end of the semester, she was practically part of our group. She'd wait for us after lectures, help Tunde with projects, and even walk him halfway to the hostel. It wasn't just what she did, it was how she did it. She made him laugh in a way I'd never seen before. She made his shoulders relax. One night, as we sat in the hostel common room, Tunde told me, "Bro, I think this is it. She's the one. I'm going to marry her." He said it with a quiet certainty, like he had already decided. I didn't realize then how serious he was. I didn't realize this wasn't just a campus fling. And I definitely didn't realize how much that decision would cost him. If you had seen Tunde and Ada back then, You'd think they had been together for years. They moved in sync, like two people who had practiced being in each other's lives for a lifetime. It was strange because Tunde had never been that open with anyone before. Every morning she would wait for him outside the hostel gate, leaning against the wall with her phone in hand. The moment he stepped out, her face would light up, and they'd walk to class together. I'd sometimes trail behind them, pretending not to notice how Tunde's usual serious face softened when she spoke. Ada wasn't just about the romance. She made his life easier in ways that no one else had. She'd slip him lecture notes if he missed a class, run errands for him when he was buried in assignments, and even remind him to call his younger sister back home. She seemed to care about everything he cared about, and she never asked for much in return. There was this one rainy afternoon I'll never forget. We had just finished a grueling 3-hour lab session, and the sky had opened up without warning. Most people ran for shelter, but Ada appeared out of nowhere with an umbrella big enough for two. She didn't even have a raincoat herself, yet she made sure Tunde stayed dry. I remember watching them walk away, close under the umbrella, talking and laughing like the storm around them didn't matter. By then, Tunde had stopped hiding how he felt. He would tell me things like, "Ada makes everything lighter, bro. She's not just my girlfriend, she's my safe place." And I believed him. They weren't flashy about their relationship. No loud public displays, no campus gossip. But everyone noticed. Lecturers, classmates, even the cafeteria staff knew that if you saw one, the other was not far behind. Some people envied them, others admired them. Me? I was just happy my friend had found someone who made him happy. Still, I couldn't shake a small worry in the back of my mind. Tunde came from a family with high expectations, well-educated, middle-class, proud. They had their own quiet rules about what kind of woman was right for him. He never spoke much about it, but I could sense that his parents pictured a future for him that might not include Ada. Intellectuals, as we sat outside the hostel eating suya, I asked him if his parents knew about her. He smiled, a little too casually. "Not yet, but when they meet her, they'll see what I see." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love would be enough. But life has a way of testing even the strongest promises, and Tunde's test was closer than either of us realized. Flames finally came. Tunde had finished his final exams and he was buzzing with excitement. "Bro, it's time," he told me, grinning like a kid with a new toy. "They're going to meet Ada today." I didn't say much, but my stomach felt tight. I'd grown up in the same kind of family Tunde had. Parents like ours didn't say much, but when they disapproved of something, you could feel it before they even opened their mouths. Ada, on the other hand, was glowing. She wore a simple but elegant dress, soft cream with tiny gold buttons, nothing too flashy, nothing too plain. Her hair was neatly braided, and she carried herself with the same quiet confidence she'd always had. I could tell she had put thought into making a good first impression. The meeting was at Tunde's family home, a neat 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. His mum greeted us at the door, her smile polite but not warm. His dad was in the living room reading a newspaper and only looked up briefly before shaking Ada's hand. At first, it was normal. Tea was served. Light conversation about the weather, the journey, and Tunde's graduation. Ada was charming, speaking when spoken to, smiling when it was right. But I noticed the small things, how his mum's eyes kept scanning Ada's dress like she was looking for something out of place, how his dad kept asking about Ada's family background instead of her dreams or career. Then it happened. We had barely finished the snacks when his dad leaned back in his chair and said, "Tunde, can we talk?" They moved to the dining room. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. "She's not for you. This is not what we planned. You have a future to protect." When they came back, Ada's smile had faded and Tunde's jaw was tight. His mum politely offered her more tea, but it felt like the kind of politeness that builds walls, not bridges. The ride back to campus was silent. Ada looked out the window the whole time, and Tunde kept his hands clenched in his lap. When we reached the hostel, Ada said she had to go straight home. No goodbye hug, no see you later, just a quiet good night. That night, Tunde didn't speak to anyone. His phone rang, his mom, his dad, his younger sister, but he ignored them all. I finally asked, "What now?" He just said, "If they can't accept her, then maybe they've lost me too." At the time, I thought he was just angry. I didn't realize he meant every single word. For the next few weeks, Tunde was a ghost of himself. He still went to lectures and submitted his final year project, but his mind was somewhere else. Ada didn't push him to talk, and I didn't either. I knew he was carrying something heavy. It wasn't until the graduation dinner that things exploded. His parents didn't show up, no calls, no messages. Tunde sat there in his neatly pressed suit, smiling at the right moments, but I could see his hands trembling under the table. Ada was by his side all night, making sure he ate, introducing him to her friends, pretending like everything was fine. 2 days later, I walked into our room and found him packing. Not just clothes, everything. Books, shoes, even the small framed photo of his family he kept on his desk. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Away," he said simply. I thought he meant for a short while, maybe to clear his head. But as I watched him shove his belongings into 2 big suitcases, I realized this wasn't temporary. That evening, he called Ada. They met in the small garden behind the hostel. I stayed far enough to give them space, but I could still see the way Ada's eyes widened when he told her his plan. "They're not changing their mind," he said, his voice low but steady. "So I'm changing my life." "But your family," she began. "They made their choice," he cut in. "Now I'm making mine." Within a week, Tunde was gone. He had found a small apartment in a faraway city where no one knew him. Ada followed 2 months later, after finishing some short courses she had enrolled in. By then, they were living like a young married couple, even without the wedding. He called me once in a while to give updates. "Things are tight, but we're happy," he'd say. I could hear it in his voice, the freedom, but also the weight of having burned a bridge you can't rebuild overnight. On social media, their life looked perfect. Photos of shared breakfasts, trips to the market, little victories like buying a second-hand couch or fixing a leaky tap together. But I knew the cost. I knew Tunde had cut himself off from the people who had raised him, and no matter how strong you are, that kind of wound doesn't just heal with time. Still, every time we spoke, he told me the same thing. "I don't regret it, bro. Ada is worth it." Back then, I believed him. But life has a way of testing every promise, even them turned out of love, and Tunde's test was still on the horizon. It had been 3 years since Tunde left. 3 years of building a life from scratch in a city that didn't know his name or his past. By then, Ada and Tunde were inseparable. They had turned that tiny apartment into a home, potted plants by the window, mismatched mugs on the shelf, and a small dining table that had seen countless late-night conversations. He had a decent job now, working for an engineering firm. Ada had started a small online business selling handmade bags. Money wasn't plenty, but they had enough to eat, pay rent, and dream about the future. The silence from his family had become normal. No calls, no texts, no visits. At first, Tunde would check his phone every few hours, hoping for a message. Then he stopped hoping. Until that Saturday morning, we were talking on the phone, me in my noisy student hostel, him in his quiet living room, when I heard a sharp knock in the background. It was loud, urgent. "Hold on, bro," he said. I heard footsteps, the creak of the door opening, and then nothing. Silence. "Tunde?" I called. When he came back on the line, his voice was strange. Not angry, not happy, just heavy. "They're here," he said. "Who?" "My parents." I froze. I knew Tunde well enough to know this wasn't some casual visit. If they had come all the way to his city after 3 years, it wasn't just to say hello. Later, he told me what happened. They had arrived unannounced, standing in the doorway with travel bags and tired eyes. His mom had tears in hers. His dad looked older, thinner. They didn't start with small talk. His dad simply said, "We need to talk." Ada had been in the kitchen, and when she came out, there was a moment where everyone just stared at each other. Then Tunde's mom walked to her and hugged her. Just like that. No speeches, no explanations. They sat down in the living room. His dad cleared his throat and said, "We were wrong. We didn't see what you saw, but we see it now." Tunde didn't answer immediately. 3 years of distance doesn't disappear in a minute. But as he told me later, in that moment, a small part of him felt like he was back home, a place he thought he'd lost forever. Still, I could hear the caution in his voice when he said, "We'll see where this goes." What he didn't know, what none of us knew, was that this reunion would change his life in ways none of us could have predicted. The days after his parents' visit felt like stepping into a new season. There was still tension in the air. The kind that comes when you're trying to stitch up a tear that's been there for years, but something had shifted. Tunde's parents stayed for a week. They didn't come with grand speeches or expensive gifts. Instead, they came with small gestures. His mom cooked egusi soup the way he liked it. His dad helped fix the broken latch on the front door. They asked Ada questions, not about her family status, but about her work, her dreams, the things that made her eyes light up. One evening, they all sat on the balcony eating roasted corn. The sky was turning orange, and for the first time since I'd known Tunde, I saw his parents laugh with Ada like she'd always been part of the family. It wasn't forced. It wasn't fake. When I called him that night, I could hear it in his voice, that quiet, unshakable relief. "Bro, I think they really mean it this time," he said. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when old wounds showed. Sometimes his dad would pause mid-sentence, like he was remembering the years they'd lost. Sometimes Ada would excuse herself to the kitchen when the room got too quiet. But no one walked away this time. No one shut the door. On the last night before they left, Tunde's mom pulled him aside. "We didn't see who she was back then," she admitted, her voice low. "We only saw what we thought you should have, but you chose well, Tunde. We're proud of you." Those words didn't erase the pain of the past, but they planted something new: trust. Months later, Tunde and Ada traveled back to his hometown for the first time together. I went too. We sat in his parents' living room surrounded by cousins, aunties, and uncles who treated Ada like she had always been one of them. The gap between us and them had closed, slowly, almost quietly. Watching them, I realized something I hadn't understood before. Love isn't just about choosing someone in the easy moments. It's about holding on through the seasons when you're misunderstood, when the people you care about the most can't see what you see. Tunde's story wasn't a fairy tale. It had storms, stubbornness, and years of silence. But it also had the courage to stand by someone when it would have been easier to let go, and the grace to forgive when the door finally opened again. As we left his parents' house that evening, I saw Tunde walking ahead with Ada, their hands intertwined. The sun was setting behind them, painting the street gold, and for the first time I knew this wasn't just a happy ending. It was the start of the life they had fought for, together.